Thank you guys so much for joining another episode of Who Wears Your Pants. This is Kirsten checking in, and I am here with the lovely and amazing Finley Funsten. She is a gym owner and director of MADabolic, which is a gym that focuses on strength and interval training. She is a nutritionist, and she is a former Division I hockey player, which is so badass. I cannot wait to talk to you more about that. And she is here to talk all about fitness in life. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kirsten.
Yeah. And okay, so I have to start by first asking how did you get into hockey? I mean, that's like such a killer sport. What is it like?
I have to clarify, field hockey was my sport.
Okay, cool.
And my partners, Kirk and Brandon, who are the co-founders of MADabolic, were former professional hockey players, which is, probably objectively much cooler. But I played Division I field hockey. I got into that. I'm from the Chicago area, and it was a big sport there. And my older sister played, and I had to do everything she did. And so I picked it up at an early age and ended up being pretty good at it. And it took me to college and learned a lot. And it was amazing.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so what was it like transitioning out of being a college athlete? That's something like that I'm really passionate about talking to people about because it's something that we don't really prepare for. So I'm curious what your experience has been like.
Yeah. Okay. So it was basically like going to college for a job, right? Like that was basically my job all year round. So I remember specifically my fall season of senior year was my last season. So field hockey is a fall sport, meaning after my fall season senior year, I got to like be a college student for a semester, and like I really packed it all in that senior spring. So that was my first transition out of being an athlete, and was like, wow. I mean, I learned a lot too in that time frame. But what transitioning out of college into the real world, I guess, I don't know. I guess I was kind of realistic that like I knew I was never going to go to college to play field hockey to then become a professional field hockey player. Like no one gives a shit about field hockey, to be honest. Like I do, I love it, but it's not like I was going to take that really beyond college. So I will say throughout my 4 years at Davidson, which is where I played, I was very realistic about that, and I actually like it kind of forced me to be really cognizant of the like life skills that I would pick up on the field to then apply to life after college, which a lot of that has nothing to do with the actual sport itself. It's discipline, time management, the ability to lead others, the ability to work with others, not taking shit personally, like feedback from employers. That was like actually served me really well, which I'll say a little, I really did not love the initial assumption at my first job out of college before I really got into this fitness thing. I remember getting a comment in one of my first performance reviews about like, wow, you really like, you don't take feedback too personally. Like you don't take it like most women. I was like, go fuck yourself, dude. But anyways, I guess I would attribute that to my time, playing a Division I sport, and it prepared me for stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about how, because I'm the same way. I don't really take feedback personally. I'm like, cool, give it to me. Let's have it.
Yes. Be as direct as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's never thought that would come from sports, but that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you miss sports at all? Or like, did you channel? I mean, I don't know. I was like really competitive. So I'm like, how do I channel all of this into something else?
Same. So I was too. And I remember when I finished my sport, I actually kind of went on the opposite side of the spectrum, I was like, well, fuck, I don't want to run another sprint. I don't want to look at another weight. I don't want to, for a bit, I need a break. And that was that, senior spring I was talking about, where I put on, the freshman 15 and then some in one semester. But, so I took my little brief hiatus, and then pretty much as soon as I graduated, I was like, I gotta get back into something because I miss this like team atmosphere. And I miss like being pushed and challenged. And it's funny enough, I got introduced to MADabolic, where I own the Charlotte location, and am a director at the corporate level, which we can get into later. But I was introduced to MAD as pretty much a month or two after I graduated by my former field hockey coach, my collegiate field hockey coach who lived in Charlotte. And I graduated, we kind of became, buddies, and she texted me and was like, hey, there's this like newish gym running this 10-day trial. Like, come on, like, come try it with me. And at that point I was like, I'm ready to get back into fitness and like, be challenged again, but the last person I want to work out with is you. Right now. My old coach who used to make me, once I puked. I was like, this is going to be terrible. So
Yeah.
I walked in, and then I went like every day for the next 10 days, which I know better now. It's a horrible thing to do. But I was so obsessed with it. And now
Gotta
like
get out of there.
here I am like 8 years later, involved to a greater degree with this brand. So I'd say MADabolic is how, since I graduated, how I've gotten my fill, on the sports level without like putting my body and mind through the fucking ringer, at that more elite level of sport.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about was it seems like you do so many different things. I mean, you are owning a gym, you're working at this corporate level as well for the brand. You are a mom, you're doing fitness yourself. I mean, it's like all of these different things, nutrition, coaching. Like how do you balance all of that
Yeah.
in your life?
Okay. So it's a lot of it's very connected. I know it looks like I do a lot, and I mean I do. I have my hands in a lot of different buckets, but so I'll start with the ownership piece. So last January, 2 months before the pandemic, was great timing. My husband and I bought into the ownership structure of MADabolic Charlotte, which is headquarters for the brand, and it's where I've been training
Mhm.
since 2013. I I started as a client here, and then I transitioned to be a trainer, and I had a full-time corporate job elsewhere. And so I was just a part-time trainer. And then I transitioned into the general manager role. And then last year I entered ownership. And then from the ownership level, is what segued me into the corporate side of things. MADabolic partnered with a private equity firm to help us scale. And as we've scaled, there's been a need for more support, on the franchising side. So I was plucked from the general manager role of MADabolic Charlotte into now it's called, I'm the director of culture and experience for MADabolic, for MADabolic corporate. And then I still own and am very much invested in and interested in the health and growth of the Charlotte locations. But my primary like day to day now is wrapped up on the corporate side of things. So I am no longer like as hands on general managey. That's a word, on the Charlotte side. So I do a lot. And then the nutrition side of things, nutrition and fitness are very like, they intersect seamlessly, right? And several years ago, about 6 years ago, I was like so overwhelmed and like done with all of these trends I got suckered into. I felt like I didn't know any better. I was jumping from bandwagon to bandwagon, and was like, fuck, I need to educate myself. So I started with a certification to do nothing other than like learn for myself about actual like scientifically backed nutritional information and approaches, and how to, properly fuel myself. And I ended up being so like mind blown by honestly the simplicity of a lot of it that I ended up turning it into this side hustle where on the side I would, help some clients from MADabolic here and there, or some friends here and there. And then that kind of spiraled into this, like it grew into something bigger than I anticipated. So I'm still really passionate about that on the side, but I'm able to leverage that knowledge and bring it into MADabolic, to be almost like the in-house nutritionist, where I'm providing all of our members support on the nutrition front. We have this, it's called the Nutrition Blueprint, that complements our training program. And it's a free nutrition approach that anyone can download. You don't have to be a member. But that kind of also plays into my corporate role right now as well. And I have a small client roster that I keep on the side and tend to at night when I'm done with my work, my 9 to 5 work. And once I put the baby down, I kind of check in with all my nutrition clients,
Yeah.
and it's good. It's a lot, but it's all shit that I love. I love talking about it. I love like breathing it. The mom piece is like this whole other thing that
Oh God.
it's great. I mean, it's just like it's so much. Like it's just a lot. That's honestly the biggest wrench into things, in the best way. She's the coolest 6-month-old baby in the world. But yeah, that definitely throws a wrench into, like, I don't have it figured all out. I'm still like adapting to what I have the bandwidth to accommodate. But yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't a
I don't
really
think
great.
anyone ever has it fully figured out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was not at all a succinct or
Yeah.
direct answer to your question. I guess that was a huge roundabout way of you asking me how I have it all together and do so much. And I'm telling you, like, I actually don't really have it all together. And I feel like my mind is in a billion different places at once. I take it day by day, and it's, it's good. I mean,
Yeah.
we all have the same 24
Awesome.
hours
Well, I
a
was
day.
gonna ask,
Yeah. It's just how I prioritize things might
yeah.
change from day to day.
Yeah. And I think that, I guess, thinking about balance, it's like, no, there never really is everything in full balance. It's like some days you're totally in one area of your life, and the other days, maybe you're only spending time with your daughter. And like that's balance in a
Totally.
different way.
Yes.
Yeah. So I
Um,
did want to ask you, because I was looking at all of your nutrition stuff, and I like love the way that you share it. It's like funny and super honest and real, and like you said, really simple. And I think we complicate things so much when we don't need to. And I actually went to school. I have a degree in nutritional science, and I've gone
oh,
so far
cool.
away from that. Yeah, and I was just wondering, like, if you wanted to share like, any of your like favorite things that you like to tell people, or like I know you had some information about like some of the stuff I loved was like you're talking about all of these women trying to get rid of like their lower belly pooch, and you're like, no, that's your uterus.
Actually,
Like,
your uterus, it's supposed
yeah.
to be. Yes.
It's like stuff like that, and some of the ways you talked about like the even the vocabulary that we use, like cheat days or bad days and things like that, of like shifting our mindset away from that. So
Absolutely. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Yeah. Okay. I'll try to not completely word vomit here. And feel free to like interrupt me. And if I say something that you want me to expand on more, I will. But I guess what I've learned the most, the biggest thing I've learned since working with nutrition clients is that like we, specifically women, but men too, are dickheads to ourselves. Like people are such jackasses with their nutrition, and to no fault of their own really, because a lot of people just don't know any better. And unfortunately, like you shouldn't have to go out and become a nutritionist to like understand the basic principles of how to eat. But like it is so upsetting how pervasive these like sub 1,500 calorie diets are, or how people gravitate towards like demonizing an entire food group, like fear of this irrational fear of carbohydrates, or this is too high in fat, or even just how the word, like you can slap the word low calorie on a nutrition label, and all of a sudden that makes it something that's way more appealing to buy, as if the word calorie is a bad thing. And basically the approach that I push, it's just a fixed science. It's the large umbrella is calories in, calories out. That is what dictates overall body composition, or that will dictate overall weight and body composition. And then you can more finitely manipulate body comp through certain macronutrient splits, focusing on a high protein diet, depending on what your activity level is. Maybe your carb and fat splits vary, but that's almost getting more nuanced than I feel like most people even need to get. I want to start by just seeing people eating more and eating enough, and like understanding that a 1200 calories is what my fucking 7-month-old baby needs to eat in a day. Like, you're a 30-year-old woman, Karen. You should probably be eating more than my baby, right? So, like, that's my approach. And I try to be, I think I come a little more aggressively than I am. Like,
I
I
love
guess I'm
it.
an aggressive individual, but like, I want to catch people's attention to like correct this mentality.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just like a lot of the whole cheat day, those mentalities, like a lot of our messed up relationships with food comes from these dogmatic, super restrictive dietary approaches, whether you're restricting through just like chasing a ridiculously low calorie diet, or dogmatic and restrictive from the perspective of like, again, axing food groups and following diets that have like yes lists and no lists. And over time, when you adhere and subscribe to that type of like diet culture, then you start to associate foods that were on that no list with being bad, or like you feel guilty after eating it. Like, I had a cheeseburger for dinner last night, and that's something that people are like, so many women specifically were DMing me being like, oh my God, I wish I could have a cheeseburger on a Monday night. It's like, well, you can. It's so it takes a lot of time. When I find that I'm working with people, that's kind of what we need to tackle first, is breaking that mindset, encouraging more food to actually fuel yourself and not like feel like shit all the time. And once
Yeah.
that is kind of corrected, tackling specific aesthetic and body composition goals is very manageable. Like, I'm not here to say that fat loss goals are bad. That's not the case, but I am saying that you can achieve that goal by not you don't have to eat 1200 calories to achieve that goal, Um while everyone is so unique in their individual makeup and what their nutritional needs are to a degree, everyone needs to eat more than 1200 calories. And most women are constantly trying to make themselves smaller. And I it's like my diehard mission to like encourage women to take up more space, you know? And a lot of times that starts with
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like a lot of like these ideas come from like having an emotion around food. And that
Yes.
was one thing that I've always found interesting. Like, is even going back to like when you're a kid and you're rewarded, and it's like a reward is like a treat or something like that. And
Right.
thinking about how we can remove that. Is that something that you ever notice, or how do you navigate that with your clients?
Totally. So yes, between it all, a lot of it plays out the same way, between like either a cheat day mentality, like you assign one day of the week where you can just eat whatever you want, and then all week long you're just thinking about that Saturday when all the rules
Mhm.
are off the table, you can eat whatever. Or you reward yourself for doing or completing the XYZ task, and I'm gonna reward myself with an ice cream cone or whatever. And that type of one of my favorite ways to start to break that approach or mentality is to encourage my clients or anyone to plan something that they deem as a treat or a cheat food or something that's what they'd ordinarily perceive as naughty into their day, like every single day. So if you struggle with a control around Oreos, or if you know, I'm using the word, I'm going to use Oreo as the sample food. Like, so let's say you either like you can't keep a sleeve of Oreos in your house without binging on it, or that's your cheat food. You're going to fucking smash that Oreo sleeve on Sunday, or whatever it may be. I'm going to ask that you instead intentionally eat 4 Oreos every single day for a month or 2 months or however long it is. Or maybe it's Oreos one day and a Snickers bar the next, or whatever. I want you to include something that you think is naughty into your every single day. And eventually over time, you start to gain, it becomes no big deal. Like, a lot of these foods are put up on pedestals, or like we restrict ourselves from them for so long that the food controls you. You don't control the food. And I want you to reestablish your control over everything that you're eating. And that works. And you know, there are times where a client's like, I ate more than my 4 Oreos. I ate too many of them. And like, you know, diet starts Monday. I'm going to cut all my calories again. Well, no, even if you overeat on your Oreos yesterday, I still want you to have 4 of them today. Or, you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally. Yeah. And that's like really interesting way to describe it. Like the
yeah, so that,
controlling the food controlling
exactly.
you versus you controlling it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can
Yeah.
be a really like effective, simple tool for anyone listening. If like this resonates with you, um, try
Yeah.
that and see how that works. And then like another very simple realization is like, for the if you consistently struggle with feeling powerless over food, or you end up every weekend turns into some kind of binge or overeating pattern, um, it's likely not that you're being naughty, or that your willpower sucks. It's probably that you're not eating enough throughout the week. Like, try just increasing caloric intake and eating more food, and then, you know, you're not feeling so deprived and, you know, hungry for shit that you never get to have. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an awesome way to look at it. It's interesting for me because I kind of come from like this flip side, which is it's hard to talk about with people because I try to gain weight. I've just always been like have a naturally slender frame, and so like actually putting on weight and like I just don't have like the biggest appetite in the world and I have a fast metabolism. And
Right.
it's hard because there's kind of like this, I don't know if it's a double-edged sword or something, but like you can't really talk about that with your friends. You're like, I don't know what to do, because they're over there like on the other side a lot of the time. So do you have any advice or like things that you like to share with women or just anybody on how to, I guess you're talking about increasing your caloric intake, but other
Right.
things as well.
Yeah. So like, putting on any kind of mass is going to require a caloric surplus. So I would recommend trying to identify your total daily energy expenditure. So like the number of calories you burn in a day, which is going to include a variety of factors. The biggest thing that weighs in there would be your basal metabolic rate. So the number of calories you burn at rest. Like if you, Kirsten, were to lay in bed all day long, not do anything, you would burn X number of calories, and that would be what the bare minimum of what you need to survive. So that's going to be the biggest factor to determine, and there are ways to do that, and I can direct you to a good resource. your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's called NEAT. Those are the calories you burn doing anything other than exercise. So walking around, brushing your teeth, standing. That actually plays a bigger role than your exercise calories. So that'll be another bucket. So your training regimen will impact things, and then your the thermal effect of food is another thing that impacts. So we actually expend calories by just eating, and we can maximize that output when we eat more balanced meals that contain all three macronutrients: fats, protein, yes, carbs. So all of those things paint this really big picture of how many calories we need to eat in a day, and it's a lot more than 1,200. Most people's basal metabolic rates are above 12, certainly above 1,200 calories. So you can imagine. Anyways, that's a completely. I'm gonna go off on a tangent. So to gain or to lose, you need to figure out what you expend in a day. And I'll just point you towards a really simple resource to identify that TDEE, that total daily calorie expenditure, is going to be the Precision Nutrition Calculator. I'm not big on online calculators because everyone is so unique. That is just a really good starting point, and I like that. I like that option because it errs on the side of feeding you more. It's not gonna like. Have you ever played around with MyFitnessPal, the app? Kirsten? Yeah. So like, if you were to plug in like, hey, fat loss is my goal, like some of the calculations that MyFitnessPal uses to like populate someone's diary for fat loss is like asinine. So I generally don't love calculators, but the precision nutrition option is going to give you an actual solid amount of food to work with. So start there, see what your TDE is, what that calorie goal is for that would be your maintenance, and start by trying to eat 200 to 300 calories past that per day, and then that's going to help you put the mass on that you're maybe looking to add. But it is just a very simple science of energy balance. Like what you're expending, you need to eat more than that if you want to gain. You need to eat less than that if you want to lose.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like if someone, because that's like doing the calculations and like, do you have any, how would you tell someone like if you're just living your life and you don't want to like measure things
Oh yeah,
and do all of that, how do you, just because like looking at things from a longevity perspective,
totally.
like what advice do you have around how to just live nutritionally well?
Yep. Yeah, I love that question because even though my like one-on-one nutrition coaching generally is like calorie and macronutrient focused, that is a very real thing. Like I don't want you to be like plugging your food into a tracking app for the rest of your life. That's not sustainable, right? Like what I prefer to look at that as more of a tool. Like it's an educational tool to help you gain an understanding of what an adequate amount of food looks and feels like for you. So whether it's physically tracking your calories or macros, or just journaling your food and what you eat, and then making notes of how you feel, I recommend doing that for a really short period of time, even if it's for just a week, so that it's really hard to eat intuitively if you have no intuition to work off of. Like if for someone who's starting at ground zero and has no idea how much protein they need in a day, it might be beneficial to track that for a brief period of time to understand what, like, oh, I 30% of my intake roughly might need to come from protein, and I have no idea what that means. So I'm going to track for a week to make sure I'm hit that, so I can see what those portions look and feel like, so that you can then use that frame of reference to be able to eat intuitively and mindfully. So even if we're not, if there's no experience, I will say if there's no experience in, um, you know, food tracking or Yeah, if there's no experience with food tracking and someone has no idea what X amount of protein looks like, I would recommend tracking even for just a week. So and measure out 6 ounces of chicken, even for one meal, so you can see what that looks like, and then maybe have a better understanding of like, I should have roughly this much protein on my balanced plate. And then it becomes a lot more easy and sustainable to carry on and live your life without tracking and measuring and weighing, because that definitely gets tedious and that should not be the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good idea. And then that way, like you're saying, like when you go out to dinner, if you go somewhere, because the servings are so variable, you're like, oh, this piece of chicken is actually 12 ounces, not six or something like just by like
Right,
eyeballing things.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 And then for someone like you, Kirsten, if you're, I like to call you guys hard gainers. If it's hard for you to gain weight, um, a really easy strategy too, without having to track, is just like outside of your protein sources and your carb sources, focus. Like, fats are really calorically dense. It's the most calorically dense macronutrient. They carry a little over 2 times as many calories per gram as carbs and protein. So if getting a surplus of calories in is what you need to do to reach your goal, eat more dietary fats than what you have previously been eating, just to up your calories without having to like stuff your face, because fats typically, they carry more calories, but fat sources are smaller. So it's like, your cheeses, your nuts, nut butters, um, whole milks,
Mm.
you know, olives, like any fat
Literally
source.
all of those.
Generally, you don't have to eat too much of them to clock in some, decent calories, and that definitely helps with people who want to gain and get into that surplus zone.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I was going to ask, this is a little different because you're talking, I mean, I think people think about like food and fitness together, but your nutrition it's so much more than how you work out or how you look. It's like you talked about your mood, your sleep patterns, your hormones. I mean, like, can you touch on some of that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it becomes really easy. Like, when we have an aesthetic goal in mind, I think a lot of people just are like, all right, well, I need to work out every day of the week and I need to eat X number of calories and then I'm going to look like this. That's not quite true. There are, and then it becomes easy to quantify progress by just like stepping on a scale and seeing what that number says. Like, and that becomes a huge source of frustration when you don't understand all of the other things that go into what the number is reading between your toes. So I like to encourage people to keep track of other forms of progress that your nutrition and fitness will impact outside of how much you weigh. So, like, are you sleeping better? Is your energy better? Do you find that you need a mid-afternoon cup of coffee all the time? Is that need starting to go away? Is your disposition better? Like, you know, is your performance, like, do you feel stronger in the gym? Those things make a material difference on our mindset, but also like removing that obsession with the scale and that type of progress validator,
Mm-hmm.
can go a really long way, because those things are all materially important when it comes to your nutrition and your fitness. Oftentimes, our sleep suffers, our performance suffers. We get hangry and moody when we're underfed, and like, you know, you
Yeah.
those things, even, I want to make very clear, like, if you feel like that all the time and you're just like, oh, that's just me, or that's just my normal, it is not normal to be chronically sleep deprived, to always be sore and feel like shit after you work out or while you work out, to always be moody and starving from meal to meal. Like, that's not normal. Not normal.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it sounds like basically learning how to have awareness around like what you're putting in your body and how it's making you feel.
Yeah. And that's another area where like journaling can just be a very simple and effective like
Yeah.
practice. Take note of when you feel like ass and then like tie that to like how much you didn't eat. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. And I think that I've read somewhere it's like your brain like burns a massive amount of your calories in a day. So it's like getting rid of things like mental fog or like confusion, improving your memory, decision making, like how impactful that is as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. And specifically to cognitive function, dietary fats and carbohydrates play really important roles in the brain. So like it's all important and we
Mm.
need to eat all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any foods that are this is silly, that are like your favorites? You're like, these are so good for like X, Y, and Z reasons.
Oh my God. I mean, cheeseburgers because they're satisfying. No, let's see.
Yeah.
What am I like? Um, I'm one of those people I can eat. One of my big philosophies is you need to like what you eat. So I say like you don't need to eat chicken and rice every single day. I'm someone that can eat the same thing every day and I like the same thing every day. Rice is one of my favorite foods. I eat it straight up every single day. Fantastic carb source, especially if you're active or in the fitness scene. It's one of my favorite post-workout carb sources. Um, Avocado is like just so basic of me to say that, but like always in my fridge, always slathering it all over toast, always fucking layering it onto my burgers and sandwiches. And on the protein front, I just beef, any kind of beef, red meat, keep my iron up, tastes good. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, those are probably pretty boring answers, but I also always have a sleeve
No,
of
I'm
Oreos
like getting
in
hungry.
the pantry. Always,
I'm,
always keep a sleeve
you
of
what?
Oreos
I'm sorry.
in the pantry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like we have very similar refrigerators. Um, so one thing, and this was, I know we kind of touched on this in the very beginning, but to go back to a little bit of the transitioning from fitness for sport to fitness for life. And I
Yeah.
found that to be a really interesting way of phrasing that. And I know one of the things for me, it was like recognizing that there is a huge difference between working out and training and
Yes.
like kind of living in that. So I don't know if you have any like words of wisdom or what you when you think about that transition, what really comes to mind for you?
Yeah. So the fitness for sport versus fitness for life is definitely an interesting perspective, especially when you come from a competitive background. But also, like what I think is arguably more important to touch on are the people who don't necessarily have that higher caliber, like elite competitive athletic background who are just like interested in getting fit and
Mhm.
getting in better shape and how fitness for sport in many ways has been converted into this like everyday fitness product for I guess what I'm trying to be delicate in how I put this, but basically, so what was your sport, Kirsten?
I was a swimmer.
Swimmer. Okay. Field hockey. I'm assuming you did some barbell lifts, some Olympic lifting
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
training for that, right?
Mhm.
So the barbell has become huge in the fitness industry, right? And Joe, who has been on the couch for years and is finally ready and motivated to like get his, shit together and get into the gym and I'm going to get in shape. There is no reason Joe needs to walk into a gym and try and snatch a 300-pound
Yeah.
barbell over his head. You know what I mean? So I guess
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at is that fitness forms of fitness that were really just designed for like the top 0.01% of athletes, that has now kind of become the norm to undergo like too much volume, too little recovery, 2 a days for just the average person. It's just unnecessary. Like fitness for sport, for any sport, it needs to prepare an active individual's mind and body for things like competition and impact, intensity, and you're accepting specific risks throughout a specific window, like a season or whatever, your professional athletic career, to chase a specific goal.
Yeah.
So unless you're actively competing in a sport, your training program really shouldn't look anything like those types of training programs, preparing those individuals for those competitive sports. So fitness for life, on the other hand, like that approach needs to provide you the building blocks to age like vibrantly and powerfully, free of injury, full of strength and resilience. And I think the secret there isn't really much of a secret. It's balancing the right amount of stimulus, right? Whatever your form of fitness or whatever you love to do. For me, it's strength training with an appropriate amount of recovery. And I, even though I was, clean and jerking and uh, snatching heavy as shit barbells over my head, I'm not doing that anymore, even though I'm still strength training. I'm strength training in a smarter, more intelligent way that's going to enable me to continue to do that, hopefully forever, right? So that I don't burn out or injure myself to the point of no repair. And that's kind of my take on that. That's a lot. But
No, that's a really, it's funny that you said snatching because we used to do like this. I graduated in 2012 and finished my sport then, but we had just started to kind of get into like CrossFit as some of
yeah,
our
yes,
we called it dryland training. And that involved like cleaning and snatching and stuff. And once I finished that, I was like, I don't really think that like overhead squatting is a very functional movement. Like, when
right.
am I ever going to need to be able to do that? And it was like hard on my wrists and things like that. So I just like naturally kind of moved away from some of those movements because it kind of like common sense started to kick in. I'm like, this isn't helping me in my daily life. But
Right. Like the
yeah,
gymnastics side of things of CrossFit, and that's a really good example of a lot of things which, I a lot of respect for CrossFit and and its original program design, and some of the elite CrossFit athletes, like what they can do is amazing.
yeah,
But um I just see no reason to engage in that unless you are um an elite competitor, like training for the games or something. Like,
mm,
there's a smarter way to train without like hurting yourself and
yeah,
minimizing that risk in a more like scalable way and leveling the playing field, you to thrive as you age, right? The scoreboard piece, I think, of a lot of current fitness programs is also kind of dangerous,
mm,
um, in especially for people, former athletes who aren't competing anymore but still have that competitive drive. It becomes like there's no reason to like attempt some dangerous skill just so you can beat some girl's scoreboard in fucking Nebraska who you don't know. Like, like, that's maybe a
yeah,
hot take, but that's my take.
yeah. No, no, that's a good one. Yeah. I know we're kind of coming close to time, but I did want to ask like one final topic kind of is one of the things that you talked about is helping um, this is like specifically women but just people in general about how to take control of your own life And maybe if you could share like how you've done that. And it's funny because the show is called Who Wears Your Pants? And like for me, that's like all about like owning your own life and deciding
Yeah.
to kind of do things for yourself. So I was just curious what your thoughts are there.
That's it. I mean, I love the name of this podcast, by the way. Like, I wear my own pants, and I think that you're amazing for reminding everyone, like asking this rhetorical question, like, who wears your pants? Like, you wear your own fucking pants. And that's kind of like where I would take that question is um, taking time, like prioritizing yourself isn't like be selfish with your time, I mentioned earlier, like we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and it is completely okay, and I actually would encourage you to be selfish for several of those hours. Like for me, like a gym owner and now in a new corporate role, a new mom, like that's a lot, but I'm unapologetically selfish with I need my workout. I'm non-negotiably taking 4 workouts a week. That I need that for my mental health, and I'm going to make that happen regardless of what needs to happen, whether that's asking my husband to take the baby to daycare so that I can get my workout in, or if that's blocking off a certain hour of the day that I will not take any work calls so that I can get my workout in. It's prioritizing sleep. I oh my God, maternity leave was so brutal because of that like newborn phase when they're waking up I am not someone that does well with minimal sleep. So that's something I prioritize. Like I am in bed whenever my alarm is going off, my head is on the pillow 8 hours before that. And that is, I am steadfast with that. Um, it's, I guess it's getting past the fear of disappointing someone else is hard if you're not accustomed to prioritizing yourself, but that is probably my biggest recommendation as far as that final question goes is
Yeah,
being selfish and not feeling bad about it.
I love it. Well, and when you put yourself first, then you can help other people, kind of thing. Like the
Ex-
whole, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I know we're coming up on time, but I'll try and keep this piece short. Like a really good personal example that I'm happy to share is like my journey with breastfeeding. I thought I was going to go for I had this really noble goal. Like if I can successfully breastfeed, I'm going to go for the full year. And I got back to work. I took 12 weeks of maternity leave, got back to work. The pumping was just like a whole nother thing. I got to the end of my rope really quickly with both, breastfeeding and pumping. And at 6 months, I was like, I'm done. I'm weaning. I can't do this anymore. I had no reason to do that other than me being selfish because I had no supply issues. She had a great, like we had a good connection and this good thing going, but like I wanted my time back. I wanted to stop. I wanted my body back. I wanted to stop feeling like a dairy cow. I wanted to stop pumping at work. It was starting to distract me and it was making me I wasn't as strong of a mom, of a partner, of an employee, of an employer. Like I found it draining me in so many areas of my life that I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna be selfish and I'm going to stop breastfeeding her. We're gonna put her on formula. She'll be fine. She'll survive. And of course, I got several of the messages like, well, you should really breastfeed for the whole year for optimal benefits. Like, well, that's none of your business now, is it? And like, I'm gonna be selfish with this because I'm gonna be a more present and engaging mom, wife, employer, employee, friend, like all of those things. And that was like a really personal and hard decision, but you know, I guess that's a good firsthand example of what I mean by like prioritizing yourself, um, and not feeling bad about it.
Yeah, that's an amazing, yeah, and great, incredible example. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there's like a whole thing about we won't get into about like the parenting and all, and doing things your own way for sure.
Yeah.
But great. Well, where can everybody find you if they want to connect with you, learn more about your coaching and your nutrition and all of the things?
Yeah, the easiest like catch-all place is going to be my Instagram handle because it's 2021. I'm trying to keep up. Apparently, I have to get rid of my side part now, but
Yeah, I learned that the other day too. Like,
yeah, I know. I'm like I'm gonna. But my Instagram handle, it's at Finley Funston, first name, last name, is where you can find me and connect with me. And if you're interested in learning more about the MADabolic franchising system, and if there's one near you, definitely head to our website, madabolic.com, or our MADabolic Instagram handle is another good place to connect there.
perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was really interesting to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for fielding like my completely chaotic brain.
No, that was awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Who Wears Your Pants. Please do me a favor and hit subscribe. Leave me a review or a comment so that I can turn this disaster of a show into something great. I need you. No, seriously, I do. And if you're feeling really invigorated, check out my corner of the interwebs at kirstentrammell.com, or let's get really social on the gram at Kirsten__Trammell, because as a ginger, I need all the friends I can get. Peace and love, my homies. I will see you next time.